Okay. Sorry, last week I got stuck at an appointment. I apologize. We are in Nefesh Hachaim, Shaar Daled. And we're learning together the last 5 prakim. It's very exciting, actually. Last 5 prakim of Nefesh Hachaim. And it's actually, I just feel I want to say this, that this is the 4, 5, 6 last prakim which is studied the most in yeshivas, and for obvious reasons, because it's talking about Torah and Bittul Torah and my love learning Torah, which is of course what they do in yeshivas. So it's very, very focused upon. But it's etzem, it's really the culmination of the entire sefer. It's really difficult to understand it deeply without understanding the entire Nefesh Hachaim, Shaar Aleph, Shaar Beis, Shaar Gimel. There's a reason why I put it in this order. It's a whole different view and look at Limud Torah. So let me just, last time we learned Chavtes Lamed, let me just do a 2-sentence chazar on that. The pasuk says ki ner mitzvah v'Torah or. The Gemara says mitzvahs are doimel ner, a candle, and Torah is doimel to or. And we spent a lot of time analyzing the difference between a ner and an or. Or is presumably something much. Both of them can give light, but or is a much greater light. It's let's compare it to a candle and a fire. One of the very, very deep things that we explained, both from the Nefesh Hachaim and we learned last time, if you recall, the Sefer HaTanya inside. They both say the same thing virtually. That the way this works is ner mitzvah Torah or, Torah or gives you illumination for life. It's much deeper than that. That we all know, and we've said this many times, that the Torah kadma lebrias ha'olam. The Torah was there before the world was there. We find even istakel baraisa bara alma. So people like to say it's a blueprint for the world, which I'm sure is true. What is the mashmos of Torah being there before the world? And the pshat in this is that, according to the Zohar and all those that explain the Zohar, the Arizal, that Torah is or. We don't know what Hashem is, but we know that the Bria took place through or. Let's think of it as light, because that's the only thing we can think of it of. But what's called in the Lashon of the Mekubalim, the Or Ein Sof. So Or Ein Sof is an infinite light. Ein Sof. It's an infinite light. And when Hashem created the world, or we're not talking about Hashem, we're talking about from the world of Atzilos, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. This was done through Or. And this or came into this world all the way down to our world and manifests itself, expresses itself in the words of the Torah, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, right? So it's a little bit hard to learn the psukim and see the or, but let's just talk about it theoretically for a moment, instead of going through every pasuk in the Torah. That what this means is that when Hashem created the world, istakel ba'oiraisa, dayek in the lashon of or raisa, which is that's what it means, Torah or oiraisa. So it doesn't say, maybe the Hebrew translation is istakel b'Torah, but specifically the lashon is istakel ba'oiraisa. Ubara alma, he took the or, which emanates from Hashem. And with that or, the world was created. We don't think about light as an ingredient of creation. We think about light as illuminating a creation. And I'm not a makubal to explain what does it mean, the or Bria, or do I understand infinity altogether, is certainly not the Or Ein Sof, the light of infinity. But that there was a light that emanated from Hashem. And with that light went through its tzimtzumim and came to the world of Asiya. Ubar Alma, Istako Bairai. So with that light, Bara Alma, the whole world was created. With that light, by that light, or Hashem. It's ad kedei kach that if there's any machlokes between the Balatanya and the Nefesh Hachaim, it's in this that the Balatanya holds, that the Or itself became the Bria. I don't want to oversimplify it, but in other words, the tzimtzum of the Bria is a tzimtzum of Or. So something like, just to imagine it, like you take the Or of the sun, put it through a magnifying glass, and you're mitzamtzem mitmaked the Or until it can cause Aish, because you're concentrating it all. So where the Balatanya holds that the whole world is made out of this chomer called Or Ein Sof, and there's an infinite quality to everything in the world. It could be that the Nefesh Hachaim is arguing with this, take it easy, that it's true that the Or is coming into the world, and the Or is the founder of creation, but you can't say that Hashem or even the Or Ein Sof is in this world. And the truth is that probably everybody agrees that the Or Ein Sof is in this world, but the question is, that's not Hashem. That's the Or which emanates from Hashem.
Is the Or a Nivra?
The Or is an emanation, in the words of the Mekubalim, meaning the Or is the Or is an emanation.
Well, don't we say Yotze Or Ubore Choshech? It's from Yitzira and Bria.
Right, but that's talking about the Or that we see. That's not talking about the Or Ein Sof. One of the things that came from the Or Ein Sof is the Or Abria, Yotzer Or, Bore Choshech, Shalom. This is part of Yotzer HaMa'oros. The end of that bracha is Yotzer HaMa'oros. Fascinating.
No,
we all know
but
the sun illuminates the moon, but what illuminates the sun?
But it's interesting that the Choshech is created, but the light is just Yitzira.
That's correct. But Beseder, let's because that's I don't want to get to a side point yet.
Okay.
That's 100% true. But
can I ask? Can Rav say what is a hashkachic nafkamina between the Or being mitzamtzem and Hashem being mitzamtzem?
The nafkamina is very simple. That do you say God is in everything, you become a pantheist. So that became haschola of avodah zarah. So for whether it's true or it's not true, it's a dangerous concept to say that that's God in there. There's God in that there would. On the other hand, the Zohar does say, I'm just saying that the Zohar does say, like, where is God? There's no place where he isn't. So the philosophical question of whether we're talking about Hashem being in the Bria, which is pantheistic, the Or Hashem being in the Bria, or the Or Hashem being used in the Bria, okay, that's a big machlokas. But what isn't a machlokas, and what is clear is that the Torah is Hashem's ratzon, yes, and the Torah is called, it's a mashal, but the Torah is called the Or Hashem, and that Or Hashem is baikeya into the Bria. And if you look at those Kabbalistic charts, with the 7 spheres going around in a circle, I'm sure everybody's seen them. So there's 2 Oros. Actually, the Or Hashem, you have one diagram of the Or Hashem entering into the Bria through the 7 spheres. And then you have what's called the Or Makif. And the Or Makif is not quite getting in, and that has a lot to do with the human condition, whether the Or is makif. But in other words, like the Or is not mistalik. Agav, just to get our terms somewhat correct. The Shekhinah is also called Or. Kivior panecha nasato lanu Hashem Elokeinu, teres chayim, avas chesed, tzedakah, bracha, rachmi, right? V'chaim v'shalom. Like Ba'or panecha. So the Shekhinah is called Or. So what it means is that, let's say things are really good, like we have the Beis HaMikdash and everything is good and Mashiach came. So there's a tremendous Or in this world. And that Or panecha nasata lanu, with that Or panav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's not the panav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's the Or. But what I'm adding here this morning is that Or is the Or Ein Sof. It's an infinite Or which comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this gives us a whole new meaning in Ner Mitzvah V'Torah Or, because what that means is that when we're talking about Torah as an Or, Oiraisa, and so many Chazal are based around the Oiraisa. I'll give you a very practical example of where this is used. The Gemara talks about whether you're allowed to teach Torah to somebody who's not going to keep it. Like academic, want to teach him Torah. So the Gemara has a tzad to say with all kinds of conditions. The Gemara has a tzad to say, it's before Gemara, Hamar Shabai Machzir Lemutav. Hamar Shabai Machzir Lemutav. What is that? What is that? You've heard those words, right? So what does it even mean? Hamar Shabai Machzir Lemutav. What we're talking about is somehow or another, if we can inject Torah into the mind and the blood and the spiritual bloodstream of any, let's talk about Jews for a second. So Hagufa will cause him to do tshuva. Hamar Shabai Machzir Lemutav. It's very interesting that here you have a chiluk, like you have a distinction b'derech klal between the Baal Tshuva world or the Kiruv world, let's say, of Chabad and the Kiruv world of the Litvaks, the Or Sameachs and the Eshatars of the world, and it's just a different approach. Whereas the approach of, let's say, Chabad b'derech klal, I'm sure there's the big exceptions to all of this, but I'm just saying broad strokes, that whereas the approach of Chabad is get somebody to do a mitzvah, ner mitzvah, ignite his soul. The approach of the more yeshivish approach, if you will, is teach him Torah. Just get into that office in Manhattan or Tel Aviv and teach the guy Torah, and some miracle will happen. Of Hamar Shabai Machzir Lemutav. So one is based on a concept of mitzvah gereris, mitzvah like, what's I put tefillin on, I'm gonna, automatically, I'm gonna try not to eat treif, et cetera, which is all MS. But then there's this sort of like Or Shabai Keya Lipnimiusam of taking the Or Ein Sof, and it's a very, very deep Kabbalistic idea, actually, of taking the Or Ein Sof and injecting it into a person, and it's like giving him a new lave or a new kidney, giving him a new Or, and the Or Shabai is, don't worry about his averis, because the Or Shabai will work from the inside, and Yachzir Lemutav. It's sort of like from the inside out approach. Jonathan, you're a Kiruv man. Do you agree with my distinction? Not answered.
Overall, yeah, it's broad strokes.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, everybody uses everything, just to make it work. But I can tell you that I myself have seen so often that just somehow by learning with people, it wakes up the neshama.
But
So-
you still suggest, say Shema every day, start lighting Shabbos candles.
Right. Also something like there's no steerer, right? But there's this idea in the Gemara of Hamor Shabai Machzir Lamutav. In any case, that's a dangerous route because, if the person is mamish learning Shaloi Lishma and Lakanter for Kavod, if that's the purpose of it, then it won't be Machzir Lamutav. It makes it worse. It's you're feeding the klipas. So you're on a dangerous road over there. But okay, let's assume most people are not like, Oichrei Yisrael, trying to Lakanter. So the Torah works. So this is the new, extremely important, really the summation of all of Nefesh Hachaim coming up in these prakim, or where we're learning of Torah or of the Araisa the Kamaras Chale. Just as I said that, it occurs to me that the Gemara says in Tainus, maybe Daf Hey, the Gemara tells us that sometimes you see a Talmid Chacham that's like just loses his temper and gets all upset and becomes over Dvar Torah. What are you saying that for? It's ridiculous. It's krum. So the Gemara calls that Hait Surba Merabanan de Kamaras Chabe. If you see a Tzurba Merabanan, Rashi's Mefarish, Tzurba Merabanan is unseasoned Talmid Chacham. It's a yeshiva bacher, unseasoned Talmid Chacham. Tzurba Merabanan. So if you see a member of the yeshiva, the Kamaras Chabe is getting way too excited about what he's talking about. It's not like a seasoned Talmid Chacham who's having a discussion, just screaming at you. So the Gemara says, don't worry about it so much. Lav iu the Kamaras Chabe. It's not really him that's getting angry. Elo oiraisa the Kamaras Chabe. It's the Torah that he's learning the Kamaras Chabe. It's a fascinating thing. Like he has this or, you learn Sugya, Tosfos, or Chaim Brisker, whatever you're learning. You have this or, and it's oiraisa the Kamaras Chabe. It just shakes me all up to the point that I'm screaming and I'm yelling. Now, if a person is a seasoned Talmid Chacham, you become a kli for that or, and you emanate light in a very, very beautiful way, in a very, very calm way, and the way of true Talmidei Chachamim benachas, divrei Chachamim benachas nishmoyim. But the Gemara says, don't get worried about Talmid Chacham that's getting all upset. Like what's the matter with you getting upset? I rise to the Kamaras Chabe. So what are we talking about? We're talking about that or ein soif, which is nichnas l'toicha adam. Aflu v'vela, to understand what we're doing when we're learning Torah. Just literally changing us. And if it's not, then got to learn differently. So I want to spend a few minutes in Perek Lamed Aleph, where Perek by Perek here, the Nefesh Hachaim is explaining what happens when you learn Torah in a very deep way. So in Perek Lamed Aleph, Nefesh Hachaim says, "Umizeh tam gam kein," for the very same reason. Esek haTorah hi mechaperes al kol ha'avonos shel hanefesh hachotes. This is a good deal, so listen up. Esek haTorah, that if you're osek in Torah, mechaperes al kol ha'avonos shel hanefesh hachotes. It's mechaper your averos. Did an avera learn Torah? Kimamaram zichronim levracha, like the Gemara says at the end of Menachos. My dechsiv, zois haTorah la'oila la'mincha v'lachatos. Says the Gemara, Masik, shakol la'oisek b'Torah, ein sarich loy oila v'loy mincha v'loy chatos v'loy asham. That the Torah can do what all these karbanos can do. And you find the same thing in the Tanchum. B'Shmos Rabbah Parsha Lamed Ches. Chu imachem devarim v'shuvu el Hashem. L'fishi Yisrael oimrim aniyim anu ve'ein lanu lahavi karbanos. What happens if a Jew comes and says, "I just can't afford karbanos. That's a rich man's kapara. I can't do it." So Amar Lam HaKadosh Baruch Hu devarim ani mevakesh. So learn Torah. Ani moichel lachem al kol avonosechem ve'in dvarim ela divrei Torah. Hu imachem divarim. Now, truth be told, the Gemara darshans that to so many things. Like hu imachem divarim could mean that you have to have vidui bepeh. There's so many things that we get from the hu imachem divarim. But this medrash says hu imachem divarim means that it's machaper averis. The divrei Torah is machaper averis. Ubetan chuma vayakel. Where there, the Chazal are talking about the Vayakel is where we built the Aron Kodesh, yeah. But Tanchuma Vayakel be'inyan ha'aron amru shehu noisei avonoseim shel Yisrael. Sha'Torah shabai, the Torah that was in the Aron, noisei avonoseim shel Yisrael, lifts us up from our avonos. Ubetana deve Eliyahu, Seder Eliyahu Rabba, Adam she'aver averis harbe v'kansol of misa. Person does averis chas v'shalom chayv misa, v'chazar v'aser tshuva, and he does tshuva. V'koyra Torah nevi'im muksuvim, v'shana mishnah midrash halachos v'agodas, v'shimesh chachama afilu nigzer alav me'ik zeres hakadosh baruch hu ma'aver mimenu. So I'm reading this and keeps on going with the Zohar. We should learn through it all, but I'm thinking to myself, come on. Like there's a whole Sefer Vayikra, which is talking about karbanos. So if you did this aver, you bring this carbon. If you bring that aver, that carbon. Asham, Chata, Soila, Shoigeg, Mezid. So what is he positing here in Parak Lamed Aleph? That okay, but you could have just taken care of it by learning a Ksois or a Tosfos or a Gemara. Is that what we're saying here? You don't need karbanos. Aniyim anu ve'ein lanu lahavi karbanos. Amar LaKadosh Baruch Hu devarim anim avakir. So learn Torah. He says it very clearly now. Kol ha'isek b'Torah, going back to the beginning, ein tzarech lo yo'olav lo mincha lo chatas lo yasham.
So like what's with Yom Kippur then?
What's with Yom Kippur? What's your question? Be a little more specific about that.
Just skip it and just learn. Like
right.
we would all skip it because we're all learning every day.
Right. And by the way, we don't have that choice because the nisem is nafshei sechem. There's a derisa of having to fast and have. So why? Haguf kasha, right?
Or instead of davening all day, then just fast and learn all day.
Right.
And we say teshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, ma'avinus roya hagazera. Maybe not the gezerah be'etzem, but the roya hagazera. But maybe that has to. You have to say that there's kapara and there's kapara. Like there's different shades, hues, flavors.
So first of all, let's take a derech halimud over here and say anything's possible. I mean, we don't know how God works. We're learning in a sefer from a Gadol Ador how God works, how Torah works. So just because we didn't grow up that way, that doesn't mean that's right. That's first thing. I just clear turn over the etch a sketch and shake it a little bit. Let's get a fresh look over here. However, Yosef, Daniel, what do you want to say? I'm done.
Good morning, Rabbi. So I was wondering, what about? Doesn't it say in the Torah that when Hashem describes the korbanot, doesn't it say that they're leolam, like forever? That the mitzvot, the Bet HaMikdash, the korbanot is leolam.
Well, we don't bring karbanos, right? So you mean that we will return to karbanos? So yeah. Let me.
That's the question. Yeah.
Let me explain for a moment. First of all, on Yom Kippur, we say, Slach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu, right? Three things. Slicha, mechila, kapara. Three different things. If it wasn't three different things, we wouldn't say three different things. But let's put slicha mechila into one side. I've done a chet. Let's take a mashal of a human relationship. We take a mashal of a human relationship. If I've offended somebody, if I've hurt somebody, so slicha, I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. Mechila. We usually don't, if we hurt somebody, we don't usually say kapara. Slicha, mechila. I ask you to be Michael. That's what mechila means. I ask you to find it in your heart to be Michael me. Slicha means I am genuinely apologetic, sincerely apologetic for what I've done. So two different things. Slicha, I ask you for mechila. Yes, that's the pshat.
Mm-hmm.
What's kapara in this whole story? What does kapara mean? Kapara means that let's stay on human terms for a moment, because that way it's a good mashal for Hashem. Kapara means what?
Would mean atonement.
What does that mean?
Somehow you have to give back. Somehow you have to make up for the avera.
Okay.
You have to make things
like
right.
a payment or a replacement.
Okay, so let's try this. So you're saying an emes, but not a whole emes. That if I stick with my human relationship, Ruvain steals from Shimon, goes in the middle of the night, robs his house. Feels terrible about it. Slicha. Okay, I apologize. Mechila. Some things you can pay back, and some things like it's hard to pay back. I destroyed something I can't pay back necessarily. I sold your mother's diamond ring or something. I ask you mechila, rough one already. Slicha mechila. Even if slicha and mechila, hear me well. Even if slicha and mechila are accomplished, there might still, and there probably is still, a part of me which justifiably just does not trust you anymore. There is a spot, a fleck on a relationship. Imagine a husband has an affair on a wife, or vice versa. Slicha, mechila, we'll go to, but the kapara is a rough one. Kapara means that I trust you now. We're back to where we started. It's as if you didn't say what you said. It's as if you didn't do what you did. So kapara, let me say to my word, because atonement is even a harder word than kapara. A kapara, the word in Hebrew means a cleansing. L'chaper al avoynoi sechem. Cleansing. We say it all over the Yom Kippur davening. Yom Kippur is about kapara. There is something where Hashem not only forgives us, that's tshuva, not only grants us mechila, but kapara, ad kedei kach, that we could become even closer to Hashem than when we were before we did the chet. This is, I don't know if you have to go through the Talmud Shavara B'iyun a couple hundred times to get to this madrega in a relationship, but that's the difference. I'm just defining terms over here of slicha, mechila, kapara, avara, right? Sometimes the Gemara says that Yisurim, you need Yisurim to be mechaper, right? So what happens there? It doesn't say Yisurim is not shuva. Yisurim is kapara. So what's the mechanism? The mechanism is that say there you did shuva and slicha, mechila, but I've absorbed this chet. I've ingested the chet. Like if somebody, God forbid, drinks a cup of Drano, it's not good enough to say I'm sorry. I mean, this has to be cleansed. They have to get those out of your system. So it's a poison. So kapara is the part of it, the part of the process, part of the tshuva process, the Yom Kippur where we're actually cleansing the sin. We're cleansing the Maisa Ha'egel, choose your sin, difficult part of it. That's what happens on Yom Kippur, and that happens through fasting. It happens through tshuva and davening, etc. Chamisha Inuyim. Korbanos. Where do korbanos fall into this trifecta?
They're part of kapara. You know, I mean, when the base images were there, that was the kapara. We don't find anything about korbanos except for the fact that it's kapara. Right? This is our whole. I shouldn't say our whole, but one of the yearnings for the Beis Hamikdash is to have this kapara. So korbanos are not accomplishing slicha or mechila, and it could be that it doesn't even, korbanos don't even accomplish, not it could be, it is, that it doesn't accomplish kapara either unless it's preceded by slicha and mechila. And so too, by the way, Yisurim, I always mention this like a technical tip over here, that if somebody unfortunately has Yisurim, everybody has Yisurim on some level, but if you're sitting in the dentist and he's torturing you, I hope if there's any dentists here, forgive me, but that's machaper averos, as are so many parts of our life and our relationships with people are machaper averos, and the Sfardim like to say kapara, but that's only if we're maharer b'tshuva. Otherwise, a waste of Yisurim. So follow me where I'm going here. If we have slicha, mechila, and kapara, now take the kapara end of it, and kapara parallels with korbanos. So now take the third part of that, kapara, korbanos. Torah is b'makom korbanos, and if it's b'makom korbanos, that means it's the Torah can accomplish a kapara, albeit that it can't necessarily accomplish a slicha and a mechila.
Rabbi, so is that to say that, is it possible that in the Bet HaMikdash Shlishi, like our future is not going to involve korbanot, rather the study of Torah?
Yeah, everything's
That's
possible.
what it sounds like.
Everything's possible, but I think there will be korbanos. But this is a machlokes, as you know. But the machlokes now becomes understood, because it's much easier, by the way, to bring a korban than to learn Torah. It's much easier to fast on Yom Kippur.
Not for some of us.
Yeah. So here's the story. The story is that when we talk about Torah replacing or ein sorech, what we're talking about is the kapara part of it, and the technology here is that just like by korbanos, choose whether you're carbon Torah, choose you don't, but just like by korbanos, we know that there's an eish that's b'amina shamayim v'saref as hakarbon, that an eish comes from the shamayim, from lamala lamata. The same thing as with Torah. Torah is the or ein sof, which comes from the shamayim, and can get ingested into our system even more than a carbon can, and therefore accomplish kapara within us. Let me throw in another word. Please hear me clearly. Here's the third word. Slach lanu, machal lanu, kapar lanu. Fourth word, tahara. V'taher libeinu la'avdecha b'yamas, which refers to Torah, by the way. So how does tahara fit into this? So tahara is the Kol Yotze, the effect of kapara. The beautiful thing about Yom Kippur is, you see, you wouldn't want to get rid of this, because the beautiful thing about Yom Kippur is HaKadosh Baruch Hu metayer as Yisrael. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashreichem Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu ma mikvah matayer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matar Yom Kippur is Matayer, the person. So what does that mean? It means, like, look, we all know every once in a while we can have a feeling of purity. You can have a feeling of purity if you're 1 year old or 1 month old, or you could have a feeling of purity the second after Yom Kippur. Or if you're at Ish Tahar, Kadosh, you have a feeling of purity all the time. That's a goal. But purity means like Neki Chapayim Uvar Levav. I have a purity here. I tell you what it means in real terms. That the moment I'm doing something for Hashem or for another person, for real, for them, not for me, not put, what's the definition of politics? I always say the definition of politics is that I'm doing something to get something back. So we're all political creatures, and you don't have to join the Knesset. So, but it's all about, I'll do this because I'll do this, then you'll do that. And, there's certain brains that work just like that. And, on some level, those are the ones that get things done, but there's another level of purity of thought, purity of motive, lishma, Torah lishma. So there's a matzav, if you will, of accomplishing through Torah something that you can't even accomplish with a carbon, because Torah comes in, and we see in the psukim, we're going to say it's metayer esad, which is easy to understand. No, like it's not, or is this Orein Saif coming into us? Hamar shabai yachzirei lamuta. So it means that the Torah, when it comes into us, it starts to make us, if we're doing it correctly, it starts to make us think honestly, and starts to give us some integrity. Was what I'm doing really the right thing? And it creates a purity within a person. I was having a discussion with somebody, not so from, and like he's like, so he's saying to me, Parshas Noach, like what's the, impossible, so many animals could have fit into the ark. Okay. And if this is not true, like, then if the story is not true, then that story is not true. If that story is not true, then the whole thing's not true. And I just I said, look, first I addressed the issue, like, you don't realize how big the ark was. You're talking about the size of the Titanic, if you figure it out. It doesn't mean every animal in the world was there. It just doesn't mean every species was there, but every kind of animal was there. And from there came out millions of species, infinite amount of species. Yeah, but it's the story. It occurred to me that what's obvious, like Rav Chaim Brisker said that Apocaris, not that he's an Apocaris, but an Apocaris has no answers, and a person with emunah has no questions. So it means to say that there's a definite agenda here that if we could slug up the story of Noach and the Teva, then I don't have to keep Shabbos. So, what is like highly motivated to slug up the Torah? But, my response was like, I said, unbelievable. It's 2022. and we've already gone through Yirmiyahu and Hillel and the Anshe Knesset Agdola and the Rambam and the Ramchal, and amazing, nobody ever thought of this question before. like it's a pal. The answer is that if you learn Torah for a couple of hours, that's not an answer, I'm just making a reaction. If you learn Torah for a couple of hours, learn a good Ksais or a good Nefesh Hachaim, So obviously you realize how sophisticated the Laim de Torah and how sophisticated our Messiah is, and how we have to understand everything. And it's so a little bit of humility, first of all, not to think that, oh, I thought of this question, so there goes everything. So Hamor Shaboy Machzir Lamutav. By the way, he's a good guy. Hamor Shaboy Machzir Lamutav means that if one will actually allow the light, the Oraisa, the Or Ein Sof, into who we are, what we are, into our way of thinking, into our way of feeling, into what we say and into what we do, those actions will be Achzirei Lamutav, because all of a sudden we'll think with integrity, not politically. Not to think that if I do this, that'll happen, and if I can come, this is not a science experiment. It's about Hamar Shabai Machzir Lamutav. So in short, we got to end here, but in short, there's so much here that I think we all need to absorb. Literally, is the Torah is Torah Ora, Oraisa, Ratzon Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and it was the Or of Torah, which, like every other Or, does not shine unless it's bouncing off something. It has to reflect. The Or of Torah comes into this world, the trees, the oceans, the sunrise, the sunset, and us are created to absorb the Or and to emanate it further. That's all of life. Spread Or. Sim shalom toivu avracha kiva Or panecha nasata lanu Torahs Chaim. With this Or, you gave us Torahs Chaim. So it's all about ingesting the Or, or absorbing the Or, and then Or zarua la tzaddik ula yishrei lev simcha. The tzaddik is already emanating Or, and everybody around you can't get enough of you. give me some Or, and but it has to go with Torah Lishma, pure. Okay, so what does it mean that it's replacing karbanos? Still don't want to leave this with a question over Shabbos. It's replacing a big part of the kapara of a chet. And by the way, the kapara of a carbon, so when you say, like, well, then why do we have to bring karbanos laws of love? Well, it could be karbanos do other things also. There's a number of things like the Rambam says about karbanos, but in terms of the kapara of the carbon, this Torah can do other things too, karbanos, but this we can accomplish with Torah. Okay, that's what I wanted to be mavarer. Any comments before I cut you all off?
Amazing.
The Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef on his father's side, he asked the question of Oshba Yaser Mutav. You don't see that happening all the time. He quoted a Gra who said that's only limit halacha.
The Gra said what?
That that klal is state only by limud halacha.
Okay. So what?
Interesting.
You don't say that. You don't see that either all the time. Look. I'm not. I mean, the Gra says. I'm not. But what the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gra says that Torah Lishma, and you can get a moment of Torah Lishma, so that it's a moment of illumination, enlightenment, a moment of MS, and that's Machzirei Lamutav. So I'm not sure the technicality if it's halacha or kabbalah or agada. Dafka, I believe the Maharsha says on that Gemara, it's talking about limud agadas. So maybe it's a machal. Okay. Shabbat shalom.
Good Shabbos.
I want to return this shiur to the shul where it belongs, but they're doing this construction there. And it's just going to become like on and off for the next week or so. So we'll stick with this, but then maybe we'll keep the Zoom on anyways because Rabbi Yaakov Pinsky is here and Zachar Fried and others. But at the same time,
We'll drive in. We'll drive in.
Oh, Bli Neder. That's all, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Good
Yeah.
Shabbos.
Yeah.
Shabbos.
Thanks.